7:30. So we like to dedicate Torah study. You see, Torah is something which is very special. Torah is spiritual food. So just like our body physically needs food to survive, our soul, our neshama, needs physical food to nourish it. So when someone physically passes away, it's very sad, it's very painful. But we believe that just like energy can never be destroyed, so too a neshama, so too a soul is eternal. So therefore, having said that, it is customary to dedicate Torah study to the neshama, to the soul of someone who passes away. So we have two groups of people. We have, and which ties in with our class tonight. Unfortunately, sometimes in the world, we have gone through, Jewish people are no strangers to persecution. Unfortunately, Jewish people have to endure many painful, many difficult challenges, and we're going to speak about it tonight. And two of the people who, thank God, actually three of the people who didn't have to go through these challenges, three of the people, they grew up free, thank God. But sometimes when you don't have an enemy, an open enemy, who is going after you and trying to destroy you, it's even harder to maintain your Jewish identity. As we explained last week, Judaism is not just about, it's not just about being a response to negativity. We're not anti-Semitism. We're Jewish because it makes sense. We're Jewish because it's who we are. We're not just a response to negativity. Being Jewish is not just wearing a yellow star or any other negative factor. Being Jewish is a positive expression of our self, of our essence. And having said that, there are three people who were born in a free society and they still maintained their Jewish identity. And Boots noticed today was her yortzeit. Today was the day that she passed away. And her neshama, her soul, everyone who knew Boots, she was a very kind lady, very happy. She loved people. She loved life. And she was very proud of who she is. Ani Sher, Scott Sher's father, he was a happy, proud American Jew. And Eliezer Gutkar's dad, Jonathan, in India, was also a lawyer and someone who enjoyed being Jewish. And we also have, earlier in the week, we have two people who sadly survived horrible tribulations, persecution. One of them is very well known in Columbus, Murray Ebner. Murray Ebner was a wonderful human being. He was a happy man. He actually reminds me very much of my dad because he wasn't a victim. He always smiled. He greeted people. He was warm. He was friendly. And Helen Katzman's father, he unfortunately was wounded. And I don't know if we realize the extent of the Russian army and what they had to undergo to defeat the Nazis. But Helen's dad, Max, he was wounded. He never gave up his Jewish identity. He came to Cleveland. He was very active in Chabad with Rabbi Kazin in Cleveland. And then the Shamas, their souls, all five wonderful people, lived a very Jewish life. And then the Shamas, their souls, should have an aliyah, should have an ascent in the heavens above. Okay, we begin our class tonight. We begin our class It is on page 40. We have David. David, what page do we begin? Because I have the student. I have.
I think if we're looking at lesson 2, we're going to be on page 48.
48 it is. Now, having said that, I'll just begin with the story. You know, unfortunately, anti-Semitism is something which is very prevalent. And there were 2 anti-Semites, and they were standing in their new, soon-to-be open store in the Manhattan, in the Upper West Side. And the store wasn't ready yet. It was empty. And they know that this huge Jewish traffic goes through Manhattan. So one anti-Semite says to another that I bet you there'll be a Jew who sticks his head in and asks us what we're selling. And sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, an old Jewish man stuck his head in, says, "Nice store." It was totally empty. Great space. What are you fellas selling? And this anti-Semite tells the old Jew, well, today we're selling idiots. And the elderly Jew doesn't flinch. He says, you're doing very well with the sale. There's only 2 left. So Jewish people, unfortunately, we have been persecuted, we've been targeted, and we have been subjected to thinking very fast on our feet. And this is a sad phenomenon which didn't just begin in the previous generation. It is something which has been going on for generation after generation. It is something which painfully has plagued our people since we received the Torah. And we know that the mountain that we received the Torah is called Har Sinai, the mountain of Sinai. And the Talmud says, do you know why it's called Mount Sinai? Because the word Sinai comes from the word sinah, hatred. Because when the Jewish people received the Torah, they became the conscience of society. And they were the ones who we explained last week were pointing their fingers and saying, you can't do this and you can't do that. And how dare you break this rule? How you have to be kind to people and you can't do this. And then truly evil person wants to do their sin and be left alone. Now, having said that, this class is going to offer a brilliant, and I tell you the truth, I'm embarrassed to say it, I never knew it before, a brilliant analysis of a Talmudic passage, and it is going to give us an understanding of an anti-Semite. And it's going to explain that anti-Semites are indeed redeemable, which is for me, it's very powerful. Later on in lesson 4, we will have details of when and how and what to respond when there are challenges. When someone makes a statement which is silly but hurtful, what is the best, most prudent, most intelligent way to respond? You have to be very, very careful. And that's lesson 4, how, when to respond. You don't want to create an anti-Semite because they messed up. It requires a lot of intelligence. That's lesson 4. But today, we're going to speak about anti-Semites. And we're going to speak about how we can, in fact, understand where this comes from and how, if it's possible, we can redeem the quality of possible salvage the anti-Semite and why does the anti-Semitism come around? What is it that motivates the anti-Semite to lash out at the Jewish people? That is what we're going to discuss today. So just to get off to a start, we have the voice of JLI, my friend and yours, Mr. David Waltuk, and there's two texts, 1 and 2. And if you read through, while David's reading through text 1 and text 2, if you can, try and understand and see if there's anything rings similar in anti-Semitic sadly commentary which people have now, even though this is thousands of years ago. And text number 1 is Tacitus, who was the 1st century, and he got his anti-Semitism from the Egyptians, which is way, way back. You know, anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is not a new phenomenon. People have changed their nationality, but the hatred is still there. As we will see in text number 1 and text number 2, there is something, you know, I always say people can change their toys. They become more sophisticated. They become better and more exact and more calculated at hatred, but still the same base human instincts. You know, the Germans, the Nazis, they were very efficient people. And there was the same hatred, the exact same hatred that the Nazis had, the same hatred, but it was more efficient. So they knew how to exterminate human life more efficiently and more in a faster, swifter way. But it's the same hatred as thousands of years ago. It's just that they had mastered technology and they had worked out, sadly and painfully, the cheapest way to kill people that didn't measure up to their standards. But the same base, the same natural hatred, it's very painful to say, it's nothing new. We go way, way back to the times of Egypt, and the hatred is there. So please, David, can you read text number 1?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anti-Semitism has been called the oldest hate, stretching back thousands of years. However, as the following texts demonstrate, the claims leveled against Jews were always absurd and often contradictory. This has remained true to this day. Once, during a plague in Egypt which caused bodily disfigurement, King Bocorus approached the oracle of Ammon and asked for a remedy, whereupon he was told to purge his kingdom and to transport this race into other lands, since it was hateful to the gods. So the Hebrews were searched out and gathered together. Then, being abandoned in the desert, while all others lay idle and weeping, one of the only exiles, Moses by name, warned them not to hope for help from gods or men, for they were deserted by both, but to trust to themselves. The Jews regard as profane all that we hold sacred. On the other hand, they permit all that we abhor. They first chose to rest on the 7th day, but after a time they were led by the charms of indolence to give over to the 7th year as well as inactivity. The other customs of the Jews are base and abominable, and owe their persistence to their depravity. For the worst rascals among other peoples, renouncing their ancestral religions, always kept sending tribute and contributions to Jerusalem, thereby increasing the wealth of the Jews. Again, the Jews are extremely loyal toward one another and always ready to show compassion, but toward every other people they feel only hate and enmity. They tell lies and invent absurd calumnies about our temple without showing any consciousness of impiety. Yet to high-minded men, nothing is more disgraceful than a lie of any description, but above all, on the subject of a temple of worldwide fame and commanding sanctity. Within this sanctuary, Appian has the effrontery to assert that the Jews kept an ass's head, worshipping that animal and deeming it worthy of the deepest reverence. The fact was disclosed, he maintains, on the occasion of the spoliation of the temple by Antiochus Epiphanes, when the head, made of gold and worth a high price, was discovered. Now, how did it escape him that the facts convict him of telling an incredible lie? He adds a second story of Greek origin, which is a malicious slander upon us from beginning to end. In their anxiety to defend Antiochus, they have further invented to discredit us the fictitious story which follows. Appian, who is there the spokesman of others, asserts that, quote, Antiochus found in the temple a couch on which a man was reclining. The king's entry was instantly hailed by him with adoration, as about to procure him profound relief. Falling at the king's knees, he stretched out his right hand and implored him to set him free. He said that he was a Greek, and that while traveling about the province for his livelihood, he was suddenly kidnapped by men of a foreign race and conveyed to the temple. There he was shut up and seen by nobody, but was fattened on feasts of the most lavish description. At first, these unlooked for attentions deceived him and caused him pleasure. Suspicion followed, then consternation. Finally, on consulting the attendants who waited upon him, he heard of the unutterable law of the Jews, for the sake of which he was being fed. The practice was repeated annually at a fixed season. They would kidnap a Greek foreigner, fatten him up for a year, and then lead him to a certain wood where they slew him, sacrificed his body with their customary ritual, partook of his flesh, and while immolating the Greek, swore an oath of enmity to the Greeks. The remains of their victim were then thrown into a pit. The man stated that he had now but a few days left to live, and implored the king, out of respect for the gods of Greece, to defeat this Jewish plot upon his lifeblood and to deliver him from his miserable predicament. Fools must be refuted, not by arguments, but by facts. Here, then, we rank impiety at its worst, and a gratuitous lie designed to mislead persons who do not trouble to investigate the facts.
Okay, this is very telling, because I don't know if you noticed how many stereotypes, anti-Semitic stereotypes, you could go through in those two passages that are, in fact, said today. How many, if you could text to David, please, so people, and then we have people in the audience, but if you could just text to David different stereotypes, anti-Semitic stereotypes. We're talking about thousands of years ago, in the time of the Egyptians. Anti-Semitism was sadly very much alive. Well, what stereotypes did we have? David, are you getting any text?
Not getting any in the chat, folks.
In the chat.
That's where you want to be, is in the chat.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
And also, if anybody would like to just remain completely anonymous, what you can do is reply or direct your chat to me, personally, instead of replying to everyone. And if I read your feedback, I won't read your name. Otherwise, just hit reply to everyone, and I can read that off.
Yeah. So what's
so we got some feedback here. The man writes, my boss, I was 22, told me that the Jews were guilty because they were abused. Highly condensed, but that was the general gist of it.
Yeah. But I see in those two passages a lot of stereotypes which are very prevalent, and it's unfortunately still used. What do you see?
Well, I would think the blood libel, sort of.
Right.
Right.
And that went all the way up to Mendel Bayless in the beginning of the 1912 or something. Around then, Mendel Bayless, a Russian Jew in Kiev, was and he actually left Kiev, and he's buried in New York. And he went on trial. There was a tremendous trial, and he was proven innocent. But this blood libel that goes back thousands of years, the Jews who we don't use any blood whatsoever, We salt our meat so that the blood is spat out. The same lie continued till the 1912 for thousands and thousands of years. What other stereotype do we?
They're pouring in, Rabbi. One is the BDS movement. There's another one that says care only about other Jews, which is so untrue, of course, but I think that's a great one. Killers of Jesus, manipulators of economies, and then believing lies even when proven otherwise.
Okay, that's very, very true
That's
and very
good.
telling. Yeah. And then when it came to money, these are all very sad. What I find fascinating, which someone told me, and I Googled it, there was a paper on it. When you had the Spanish flu, Hitler used that. Hitler used the Spanish flu and the millions and millions of deaths. He used that as an excuse to do what he wanted to do. He blamed it on the Jews. The Black Death, 1349. Of course, the Jews were not influenced. Were not, sadly, they were blamed for the Black Death, for the plague. And the reason why they didn't contract the sickness like other people is because the Jews had kosher laws, and that precluded them from the contamination which the Black Plague had. The Nazi newspaper Der Struma, so this paper began, "The Jews are our misfortune." And therefore, sadly, as we're going to see, we are blamed for things which are absolutely preposterous. David, please read text number 3, how these lies these ugly anti-Semitic tropes have raised their ugly head in text number 3. And you mentioned the BDS movement, and that is going to be addressed next week. Next week, we are going to, lesson number 3, we are going to be speaking about is being anti-Israel, being anti-Semitic. That is next week. So please, David, text number 3.
Okay, for those of you following along in the book, we're on page 53. Conspiracy theories are rarely logical. It is not surprising then that even as Al-Qaeda took credit for the September 11th attacks, the group did nothing to stop a rumor claiming that the Jews were really responsible. The rumor alleged that Israel, specifically Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, was behind the plot and had warned Jews not to go to work at the World Trade Center on the day of the attacks. On September 18th, an editor for a website known as the Information Times posted a message claiming that, quote, the terrorist government of Israel cannot be ruled out as a suspect. The editor did not identify a motive or provide evidence in support of his allegation. In his words, he was simply raising a reasonable question. 5 days later, Al-Manar, a TV station based in Lebanon, stated that Mossad had indeed warned 4,000 Jews who worked at the World Trade Center to stay home on September 11th. Within days, that rumor appeared in newspapers and electronic mailing lists all around the world. People continued to believe the lie despite the fact that about 18% of the known dead were identified in obituaries as Jews.
We are just about to watch an incredible video. The JLI National, they make it really powerful documentary videos, and it's going to illustrate a medrash. This was written thousands of years ago. There's a medrash in Eicha Rabbah, and a Jew passed before Hadrian, an evil king, and he greeted him. And the emperor said, "Who are you?" He said, "A Jew." He said, "A Jew should pass by me and greet me, have him executed." Another Jew passed by, and he didn't greet him. Hadrian said, "How dare you not greet me?" And, "Who are you?" He said, "A Jew." He had him killed. You see, his senators questioned him. He said, I don't understand what's going on. One Jew doesn't greet you and you kill him. The other Jew does greet you and you have him killed. This doesn't make sense. To which he replied, don't tell the king who and why he should hate an individual. I can hate whoever I want. It's contradictory. It doesn't make sense. And with that, she is going to play the first video. And we're on page 54. This is a very great rabbi called Menachem Zemba. He came to the Rebbe, our Rebbe's wedding in Warsaw in 1928.
On the east bank of the Vistula River, in the Warsaw suburb of Praga, a Jewish boy was born in 1883 and named Menachem, he who brings comfort. His father, Elazar Zemba, died shortly after, and the boy was raised by his grandfather. He became rapidly known as a dazzling genius and formidable Torah scholar, corresponding with the best Torah minds of his era. Menachem Zemba married at age 18. His wealthy father-in-law supported him for 20 years while he studied and put pen to paper, authoring over 10,000 pages of original Torah insights, including commentaries on Maimonides' magnum opus and on the Jerusalem Talmud, and 4 volumes of halachic responsa. His fame spread globally. He was offered rabbinical positions, including the office of the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, but he humbly shunned leadership. Leadership was thrust upon him in 1935 by order of the Grand Rabbi of Ger. The humble rabbi joined the Warsaw Rabbinate and proved his worth, becoming a world authority on Jewish law and a foremost spokesman for Polish Jewry. Before reaching age 40, Rabbi Zemba was appointed honorary secretary to Moetzes Gedolei HaTorah, the Council of Great Torah Sages, populated by sages twice his age. In 1937, he twice addressed the full assemblage and was treated with awe. Then the Nazis arrived. Jewish Warsaw was reduced to a ghetto. 460,000 people were imprisoned in just 1.3 square miles. Starvation, disease, deportation, murder. Despite repeated offers of escape, Rabbi Zemba refused to abandon his flock. To them, he was a rare pillar of comfort. As one of a handful of rabbis who survived in the ghetto until its final days, he rallied his desperate brethren with powerful messages of hope and determination. He recorded an insight into the nature of anti-Semitism before the war. In light of his subsequent experiences under Nazi depravity, his words ring with timeless poignancy. There are those who seek to identify legitimate causes for the hatred of Jews. However, reality has shown that there is no legitimate reason. Anti-Semitism has no justifiable cause. The haters simply choose to hate God's people. This is demonstrated by the fact that Jews are hated for being capitalists and also for being socialists. They are hated because they are overly ambitious and sharp-minded, and also because they are indolent and parasitic. They are hated because they are too religious and conservative, and also because they advance progressive and secular ideas. The reasons for this hatred are consistently contradictory and have not an ounce of logic behind them. Shortly before Passover, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising erupted. Amid furious fighting and flames, Rabbi Zemba calmly conducted a Passover Seder as if nothing was amiss. But on the 5th day of Passover, April 24th, 1943, Rabbi Zemba was gunned down by Nazi bullets. The community he shepherded with love and sacrifice came together at terrible risk to bury their beloved rabbi in a temporary grave. His family was deported to Treblinka, none survived. His lifetime of copious writings rose to heaven in the Warsaw fires. Hardly any of it survived. In 1958, his body was exhumed. Tens of thousands of people amassed, including an array of leading Jewish sages, to lay the heroic rabbi to eternal rest in dignity. Reality has proven that this righteous man was right. There is no legitimate reason for the hatred leveled in each generation against the innocent men, women, and children of the Jewish people.
Okay, so we're back. So this rabbi was a very great rabbi. This rabbi, he said it the way it is. It doesn't make sense. If you get blamed for being a communist, then you get blamed for being a capitalist. It's a contradiction. I make up your mind. Who are you? It simply does not make sense. So if it made sense, you could provide more information, you could try to get out the message better. But when there is an irrational hatred, how can you possibly argue with pure hate? It doesn't make sense. They hate you, whatever you're going to do, you're just despicable and need to sadly be erased from this world.
What are you taking from them that they want?
Well, so I'll just repeat, because we have people in the audience. We're doing people in the audience, and we have people on Zoom, obviously. So what we're taking from the question was asked. The question was asked, what are we taking from them?
Yes, why do they hate us? What do they think we are taking from them?
Okay, that's what we're going to speak about today. It doesn't make sense. First of all, the whole thing, it's ancient. Another one, it's contradictory. I'm not saying everyone. And later on in this class, which is very prolific, we will explain when we can salvage, when we can't salvage, what we can do, what we can't do. But when you know that sometimes it's irrational, you can't deal with irrational. What you can do is, as we explained last week, what you can do is you can educate. If you're doing the mitzvah, like I spoke about my friend who gives 6 scholarships to the inner city, to a small little hick village, city in Ohio, I told them, I said, you're giving it anyway. You give them the envelope with the scholarship. Just tell them you're Jewish. They should remember that there was a Jew who was nice to them. You're not doing it. You're not doing it to be famous. You're not doing it for self gratification. You're doing it because you want to give them a chance. You came from this city. But just there are ways we can educate. And later on, at the end of this class, you're going to walk away with a profound understanding of what can be done. But just we have to understand hatred for what it is, not all the time. Sometimes it is irrational. It just doesn't make sense. And that's just the reality. And I'll tell you what is good. Because last week I spoke about positivity, which has come out through anti-Semitism. I was just at a Chabad convention. And a Chabad convention, we have over 4,000 Chabad houses all over the world. Literally, not one or two. We're talking about everywhere in the world. The world is a small place for Chabad. I have friends who have gone out to godforsaken neighborhoods. And I was in the former Soviet Union in 1989. And I went out for 3 months to educate. I went to a camp, and then I went to the Ural Mountains. And I'm going to show you a video. We condensed it about a Chabad rabbi. And it's got subtitles on the bottom, so you can see it. And his response and what caused him to leave Israel and go live in Siberia. And it was anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, we don't like it. We don't want any hatred for any nationality. No one deserves to be hated, a nationality to be despised. But sometimes, just parenthetically, after the weekend I spent with thousands of fellow Chabad rabbis, I want to share with you this video, please. And you'll see something positive sadly came from hatred, from anti-Semitism. Because our job is to take the positive in everything. Here we go.
מאז שהייתי ילד הרצתי שליחס, שלוחים, וחלמתי להיות שליח. ולכן, כשהייתי בשידוכים עם אשתי, אמרתי לה שאני מייעד את עצמי להיות שליח, והיא אמרה לי משפט אחד: אני מוכנה ללכת איתך לכל מקום לשליחס, חוץ מרוסיה. והתחתנו, והתחלנו לחפש מקום לשליחס. בין ההצעות שקיבלנו היה להיפגש עם הרב הראשי לרוסיה, הרב בר אלעזר.
Told him there's actually a big city, the capital of Siberia, Novosibirsk, and what do you think about it? So his first reaction was, it's not for him, it's not for his wife, too far, too cold, too complicated, no community.
ואז הוא הציע לנו רעיון, הוא אמר, תקשיבו, אני מציע שתיסעו למקום, תהיו שמה, ואז תגידו את הלא.
The Rebbe always told people, Leisanyan, to look into it. So look into it. Who knows, maybe actually it's going to excite you.
הגענו לנובוסיבירסק, ורק כשהגענו לפה הבנו מה זה סיביר, היה כפור של 30 מינוס, ואז שאלתי איפה נמצא בית כנסת, שזה המקום הראשון שרציתי לראות. מה שאני רואה, בניין שהוא מת ליפול, מקום משכנם של כל ההומלסים של נובוסיבירסק, ושירותים בדלי בחוץ. זה כל היהדות של נובוסיבירסק, עיר שלישית בגודלה ברוסיה. הגיע פורים, חגגנו, הזמנו כמה יהודים שאפשר, ואז יומיים לפני שאני טס בחזרה, החלטתי להגיע לבית כנסת, להתפלל. אני פותח את דלתות בית הכנסת, חשכו עיניי. פוגרום בבית כנסת. סידורים על הרצפה, חומשים, והדבר שהכי כאב זה לראות ספר תורה זרוק על הרצפה. כמובן שהריאקציה שהייתה לי זה דמעות בעיניים.
Sure enough, I get a call. It was the middle of the night, and he was frantic. We always say that if there's going to be any anti-Semitism, we're going to be the first ones to make sure that this gets the attention from the government.
כי אחרת השלטונות המקומיים לא יעשו שום דבר אם לא יהיה רעש תקשורתי.
Open up the shul and show it to them. That's it. That's all I asked him.
כעבור שעה הגעתי, בחוץ כבר מחכים כלי תקשורת. איך שהגעתי ישר הם התנפלו עליי, הכניסו אותי פנימה לתוך הבית כנסת עם הפוגרום, הצמידו לי מיקרופונים, מצלמות טלוויזיה, מסיבת עיתונאים מאולתרת. השאלה הראשונה ששאלו אותי, האם אני הרב של נובוסיבירסק?
כמה זמן אתה בנובוסיבירסק? ובגלל מה אתה בו?
הסיטואציה הייתה נראה לי סוג של חלום, לא הבנתי מה לי, בחור בן 24, במדינה זרה, ללא שפה, ואני בעצם מייצג פה את כל הקהילה היהודית, ברצוני או שלא ברצוני, ולתת איזשהו מענה לסיטואציה הקשה שבעצם כל הקהילה היהודית נמצאת בה. וחשבתי לעצמי באותו שנייה, אם אני לא הרב של נובוסיבירסק, אז מה בעצם אני עושה פה? ועניתי, כן, אני הרב של נובוסיבירסק. אני לא נמצא פה הרבה זמן, אני נמצא פה תקופה קצרה, על מנת להיות רב ליהודים פה בנובוסיביר, שלא היה כאן רב. והמטרה היא להיות רב בבית הכנסת, שיהודים יבואו ויתפללו וילמדו תורה כמו שצריך. ואז שאלו אותי, מה התוכניות שלכם? אמרתי להם, אצל יהודים יש את האמרה הידועה, כאשר יענו אותו כן יפרוץ. לאנשים האחראים בעירייה ובכל מקום, שבאמת יעשו כל מה שביכולתם, שלא יקרה עוד פעם כזה דבר, כי דבר כזה שקורה בעיר זה דבר מאוד מאוד קשה ומאוד מאוד גרוע. ובאמת האפשרות היחידה שאפשר לעשות את זה, שבאמת סוף כל סוף יהיה מקום שאפשר לבנות בית כנסת גדול ושם יהיה ביטחון כמו שצריך ולא כמו שהיה כאן.
He probably didn't even realize what he was saying. That was a story, that a new rabbi came to town just a week ago, and here's a pogrom. The day after Purim, Jewish holiday, pogrom, new rabbi. And of course the story went viral, was all over the news, and it was getting coverage from every possible newspaper.
התחילו להתקשר אליי מהארץ, כלי תקשורת, רדיו, עיתונאים, היה רעש תקשורתי אדיר.
And of course we called people in the government and we said, listen, this is what's going on, something has to change.
הגעתי לארץ, חברים, ידידים, משפחה, כולם מתקשרים אליי, מברכים אותי על השליחות, מקום השליחות החדשה. אני ואשתי לא יודעים איך לאכול את הדבר הזה, לא הודענו לאף אחד, כי מבחינתנו זה היה פשוט טיול בסיביר. ככה עברו שבועיים, שלושה, חודש, חודשיים, ואז ערב אחד אני מתיישב עם אשתי סביב השולחן, ואני אומר לה, ואנחנו מדברים ואומרים, תקשיבי, כל העולם כולו החליט ויודע שאנחנו השלוחים בנובוסיבירסק, חוץ מאיתנו. וככה החלטנו שאנחנו יוצאים לשליחות בנובוסיבירסק. מעולם, בחיים, לא הייתי מגיע לנובוסיבירסק, חד משמעי. בדרך כלל, פוגרומים הבריחו את יהודים והשפילו יהודים. ובמקרה שלנו, הפוגרום הביא את היהדות והביא גאווה לעם היהודי. תוך כמה חודשים הרגשנו כמה החום היהודי, האור שאנחנו מביאים לעיר, באמת מאיר את היהודים, את הנשמות שלהם. מאות יהודים התחילו להגיע לקהילה, התחלנו בפעילות ענפה, שבתות, תפילות. אותם אלו פורים שעשו את הפוגרום, אם הם היו יודעים מה התוצאה של הפוגרום שהם עשו אז, הם בטוח היו חושבים פעמיים.
Yeah, this is amazing. For me, this is absolutely amazing. The reason why this is amazing for me is because this is what we believe. We believe when there's hatred, when it's irrational, it's very hard. How do you counter irrational people who hate you just because you exist? But our response is to be irrational right back. You know, you heard the story. Doesn't make sense for an Israeli family to leave Israel where their kids are going to have friends, where their kids can grow up like typical kids, and to go to a Siberia. It's like a jail sentence, you know, go to Siberia. It's irrational. But that's how we fight darkness. We fight darkness with light. And the Talmud actually says, that the anti-Semites have done more for the Jews than all the prophets put together. The anti-Semites bring out within the Jewish people Jewish pride. I was a rabbi in 1991. 30 years ago, I came to Ohio State University. And when I came to Ohio State University, you know, we started a hot dog machine. I used to stand on the corner of 15 and High and sell hot dogs, meet Jewish. And, you know, we built up and we tried. And one day, it was 1992, Bradley Smith, he was a Holocaust revisionist. And this Bradley Smith, he took a full-page ad in the Lantern, in the campus newspaper, saying that the Holocaust never happened. We flew in a Holocaust survivor who sued Bradley Smith, and he lived in Huntington Beach in Los Angeles. What Bradley Smith, what he accomplished was a renaissance of Jewish pride at Ohio State University. What this Bradley Smith, what he did, if he would have known how many Jews got involved because they felt threatened, he wouldn't have done it. I think, maybe, perhaps, just like on the video. But there were two Jewish bouncers. There was on High Street, there was a bar called Not Al's, because Al DeSantis owns all the bars. There were two Jewish bouncers they were the ones who brought law and order to the bar, to this drinking facility, and they got together all the bouncers on High Street, and in the Oval, kids who I never saw before, hundreds of kids came out in the night and put Israeli flags, and they put all Am Yisrael Chai posters, and these kids felt proud of being Jewish like I never saw before. Unfortunately, sometimes the response to anti-Semitism, even though we don't want anti-Semitism, we don't like anti-Semitism. No one should be hated, no nationality. But sometimes the response is so powerful that it helps Jews even more. Now, I just want to add parenthetically, because I don't want to get the punchline of this class is so powerful and brilliant. So I want to make sure we have time to explain it properly. But I will add just one little thing. My wife Esther has a great uncle. His name was Mendel Futterfass. He went to jail. He was a great Chabad rabbi. He went to jail for 9 years in Siberia, in a gulag. And the reason why he went to jail was because he was spreading Judaism against the communists. And they hated that. There was underground yeshivas, underground mikvahs, and then they put him in jail. So when he got out of Russia, the Rebbe told him he should still wear his Russian casquette, a Russian hat. Why did the Rebbe tell him this? It's very profound. Because when you're in Russia and when you have an enemy who reminds you that you're Jewish, you're going to work hard because you're threatened. But when you get to a free society, thank God, thank God. And when you can wake up and go to sleep as you please, and you can study, and you can be Jewish, and you can believe, and you can practice whatever you want, there's a problem. And the problem is that you can forget about your Judaism and you take it for granted. Therefore, the Rebbe told him the same intensity that he had against the communists who tried to uproot his Judaism, that same intensity he needed in a free society. So the problem is when you're thrust into being Jewish out of negativity, out of anti-Semitism, it can very easily dissipate when you're free, because you were only a response to the negativity. The Rebbe told him, wear the Russian casquette, that even when you're free, I want you to keep up the same intensity, the same passion in being Jewish, even though you're in free. That's something profound. And try and internalize your Jewish identity, not just for negative reasons, but for positive reasons. Having said that, David, we're gonna, because you guys are gonna love the punchline of this class. So just have to prod on. Can you please read, David, page 57? What's in a name?
Mar Wilhelm, a
Yes.
German writer, political theorist, and agitator. In 1879, Mar founded the Anti-Semites League, the first organization devoted exclusively to promoting political anti-Semitism. Mar's organization reflected his secular racism, which existed inconsistently alongside his religious anti-Semitism. His self-proclaimed goal was to free Christianity from the yoke of Judaism. Mar coined the term anti-Semitism, for which for him denoted a secular racial hatred of Jews. He used the word anti-Semitism to make Jew hatred seem rational, sanctioned by silence, polite.
Yeah, and this is a very big problem, because when you give it a name, when you give it a description, then it sounds like it's okay, it's sanctioned, it's clean. We're not doing it for no reason. And this is something which we don't unfortunately have the time. This is something I believe, and I'd love to speak and hear your thoughts. Maybe we can allow a little bit of time. I believe in absolute values, as opposed to relative values. Absolute values means don't murder, don't kill. Now, I'm not asking you to define who is a human being, who is worthy of being kept alive. It's absolute. You don't murder because God said don't murder. Perhaps one of the saddest, biggest, greatest lessons we can learn from the Holocaust, we can learn from the Holocaust is that if you go to the turn of the century, the most intellectual, the most, pardon me, the most brilliant minds, the most gifted musicians, literature, it was Germany. Germany was very astute. Their Berlin University was it. And if you don't have God, then you have a big problem because you can justify doing anything you want. The same Nazis, now we Jews, we believe in being kind to animals. It's a sin to be cruel to an animal. It's a sin. Those people who are cruel to dogs, they are most likely the people who will be pedophiles and other terrible things. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be cruel to, you're allowed to be cruel to animals. God forbid. We don't believe in being cruel to animals. But in Germany in the early 1930s, it was a crime to be cruel to a dog. It's a fact. It was a crime. The same Germany said that to be cruel to a gypsy, to a cripple, to someone who's mentally retarded, to people who didn't measure up to the Aryan race, that's okay. So a mind without God can justify anything. There's a difference between absolute values and relative values. If everything's relative, for every logic, I can give you a counter logic. Absolute values maintains don't murder, full stop, exclamation point. There's nothing else you can say because it's absolute. So having said that, although the anti-Semitism was created to make it rational and sanctioned by science and by polite people, the end of the day, David, can you please read page 58, text 7?
On the day the murderer was sentenced to death, there was a commotion in Hamburg that had not been seen there for 100 years over any man sentenced to death. The lives of all Jews were in danger due to the extreme rishus, evil wickedness, that had been roused.
Yeah. So you could call it whatever you want. At the end of the day, it's just rishus. It's evil. It's bad. You know, hating someone because they exist is bad. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. And it works the other way. To hate someone who's your enemy, who doesn't have your political views, there's no rationalizing. You can't justify hating someone because they don't subscribe to your thoughts. We're all made in the image of God, and we have to learn to get along. And when you give it a name, when you say the Spanish flu was because of the Jews, when you try and cleanse the hatred, it's all the same. You could call it anti-Semitism, nice and clean and proper, but at the end of the day, like we just read in text number 7, it's rishus, it's bad, it's evil. There's no justification for anyone to hate anyone. It doesn't exist. Okay, here we go. David, can we go to page 60, please?
There's been an almost endless set of speculations about what the cause of anti-Semitism actually is. Some have seen it in psychological terms: displaced fear, externalization of inner conflict, projected guilt, the creation of a scapegoat. Others have given it a socio-political explanation: Jews were a group who could conveniently be blamed for economic resentments, social unrest, class conflict, or destabilizing change. Yet others view it through the prism of culture and identity. Jews were the stereotyped outsiders against whom a group could define itself. Yet others, noting the concentration of anti-Semitism among the very faiths, Christianity and Islam, that trace their descent to Abraham and Judaism, favor a Freudian explanation in terms of the myth of Oedipus, who he seek to kill those who gave us birth. It would be strange indeed if so complex a phenomenon did not give rise to multiple explanations.
Okay, so listen to this. The Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, he says, is it psychological? Is it socio-political? Is it cultural, this hatred? Is it the myth of Oedipus? It's complex. Okay, it's complex. Point taken. We are now going to read a passage in the Talmud. And I tell you the truth, I have read this passage, I don't know, hundreds, but many, many times. I never had this question. This question is absolutely brilliant because it fits into the words of the Talmud. You're not forcing the explanation, and it has a profound lesson that explains anti-Semitism. Now, concentrate really well. Text number 9, page 61. There is something in the Talmud which is very different and really illogical, but has a profound explanation. And that's what this whole class is based on. Please, David, page 61.
We can use a parable to gain insight into the respective positions of Ahasuerus and Haman. They are similar to two individuals, one of whom has a tall mound in his field, whereas the other has a ditch in his field. The owner of the ditch mused to himself, "I wish I could buy the tall mound to fill up my ditch." And the owner of the mound said to himself, "I wish I could purchase the right to dump my mound into his empty ditch." Sorry, good. Turn the page here.
It's okay.
Not long afterward, the two met. The owner of the ditch said, "Sell me your mound." And the owner of the mound said, "Take it for free. You'll do me a favor."
Okay, this is a very common Talmudic passage which is quoted again and again and again. Okay, this is Haman, the Purim story. The Purim story is going to be in every single class. The Purim story is you have Haman, the king, and he is secretly married. No one knows that Esther is Jewish. And Haman wants to kill the Jews, not knowing that the queen is Jewish. So the Talmud says this parable that you have a guy who has a lot of dirt, and then you have a person who has a hole. So it's a perfect shidduch, it's a perfect marriage. Achashverosh wants to get rid of these Jews, and Haman, he wants to take the Jews. Okay, doesn't that sound like a great analogy? There's a question on that analogy. Should I tell you the question? See, I really like this because it makes you think and it makes me stop. And when you read Talmud, not just to say words, but to understand it. The Rebbe of blessed memory asks an incredible question in the words of the Talmud. I understand Achashverosh, the king, wants to get rid of the Jews. He doesn't like Jews. Get rid of them. But Achashverosh doesn't have a hole. Achashverosh, a hole means I need the Jews for something. What do you need the Jews for? You want to kill the Jews. You're not filling up a hole. You know what would be filling up a hole? I need a work camp, and I need the Jews to go work and make products for me like the Nazis did, for example, besides for extermination. That's a hole being filled up. Over here, how is the parable comparable to the reality? Both Achashverosh and Haman want to get rid of the Jews, but the Talmud uses an analogy which seems not to fit They both want to get rid of the mounds of dirt. How is it possibly comparable to Haman filling a hole with the dirt? He doesn't want to take the Jews and use them for something. He wants to kill them. I like this because it's a simple question which is logical and which everyone, I can only speak for myself, I've heard that Talmudic passage, I've learned that Talmudic passage, and it's a problem because it doesn't fit. The parable doesn't fit. And if it's in the Talmud, it has to fit. It's not just words. Do you agree that's a great question? I love the question. So the answer, and that's why I'm so excited, the answer is better than the question. That's why I'm excited. An anti-Semite has a void. An anti-Semite has a ditch, something empty in their life. And that is aroused when they see a Jew who has meaning and purpose. Now, this is radical, but I love this so much. And many years ago, we're part of ADAM-H, Drugs and Addiction, and we're a part. I love ADAM-H. It's Franklin County. It's an organization which helps people with special needs and addiction. And we brought a speaker, Shais Taub, and he found an obscure passage in the Rebbe's writings, and he wrote a whole book of it, God of My Understanding, by Shais Taub. I was at an event at Ohio State University, and they brought in a big addiction specialist. She wasn't Jewish, and she saw me, and she said, "You know Shais Taub, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And she told me she loved the book. What's the book? You know what the book is? It's built on one little obscure passage when the Rebbe writes that someone who is an addict is very, very spiritual, and they want to obliterate their physical existence, and they want to get rid of their physical existence so their soul can soar. The reason why they're an addict is because the physical world is holding them back. They want spirituality. They don't want the body to get in the way. Now, we're not justifying being an addict, but it's explaining, don't condemn, don't take these addicts and throw them out and say they're bad and say that, they're just, I don't want to use the word crazy, God forbid. There's a spiritual reason why they're an addict. They're an addict because their soul is pining, the soul is yearning for spirituality. You have to work, and that's why Alcoholics Anonymous is such a good program. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fantastic program because they realize that addicts are spiritual people, and if you don't introduce God, and I don't care what you call God, you could call him Allah, you could call him Lord, you could call him Buddha, just introduce a higher authority. That's all. Give the person, the addict, give them a spirituality. And if you give them spirituality, they don't have to remain addicted. So just like over there, there's a spiritual explanation to the phenomenon of addiction. The people who suffer from addiction are not just addicts because they want to be addicts. Their soul is pining for something spiritual. One of the greatest, for me, I can only speak for myself, one of the greatest truths a dear, dear friend of mine taught me is the serenity prayer. And I don't love the serenity prayer because I'm friends with Jerry Stiller, Serenity Now. I love the serenity prayer because it's brilliant. Because the serenity prayer is, God, you have to understand, give me the ability to know what I can cope with and what I can't cope with. But don't tell me that the addict is just an addict and throw him away and he's got an addiction. There's a reason why he's an addict. He's yearning for spirituality. So similarly over here, the Rebbe says, do you know why this person, sadly, is an anti-Semite, hates the Jews? You know why? because this person has a hollow spot in their hearts, which is void. Being happy is not enjoyment. Enjoyment, that's an animal. I'm sorry, I love animals. But an animal, you get enjoyment, you're happy, So if you get happiness through food, you can get happiness through drugs, you can get happiness through who knows what. But it's very base. Happiness is purpose. Happiness means you wake up in the morning, you have a purpose. Governor Voinovich, he became a senator. He loved Lifetown and Friendship Circle. And he told me something. It's very profound. He told me his mother's favorite saying was, those that bring sunshine into the lives of others cannot but help enjoy it themselves. Those people, there was a lady, Florence Kabakov, a sweet lady, she lived till 98. She told me the reason why she lived till 98 is because she always volunteered her whole life. Those who give, those who volunteer, you're not just happy because you eat good tasting food and you have material assets and you have success. You know why you're happy? Because you have meaning. The poor anti-Semite doesn't have real meaning in his life. He's void. He's empty. He's got a huge, huge ditch. Haman, the Talmud is right, the Rebbe says. Haman has a hole in his existence. Haman does not have a reason to wake up in the morning. He sees those damn Jews with their purpose, their meaning, their happiness, their direction. And Haman says, I despise. Last week I told you the whole reason is the canary in the mine. The whole reason is because of spirituality. Because of spirituality, therefore, because of spirituality and godliness and higher purpose, that's why he hates the Jews, because he wants to do his sin and he wants to enjoy the sin. Now this week we're saying a deeper reason. You know why he hates the Jew? Because the Jew has something he doesn't have. And this for me is very, very profound. Because some people think, and this is very painful, some people think, you want to stop anti-Semitism? Stop being Jewish. You're stoking the flames by being a proud Jew. Hide your Judaism. What do you need to go make public menorahs? Meshuggah, you crazy? Where's it saying in the Torah you have to have public menorahs? Where's it saying in the Torah you have to have Judah the Maccabee parachute from an airplane and onto the arena and light the menorah? It doesn't say this in the Torah anywhere. It's Meshuggah, crazy. I'm sorry, I couldn't help that. But why are you so proud of your Judaism? Why can't you hide your Judaism? Well, still, don't get the non-Jews upset. Why can't you just hide it? Why can't you just don't make a big noise, a big storm? Hide your Judaism. And if you hide your Judaism, they'll be nicer to you. You want to know something? It's the exact opposite. The exact opposite. I'll tell you what it says in the Talmud, and then we'll go back to the quotes because I feel good because I got the main thing out. It says in the Talmud, it's a passage. There was a man, a non-Jewish man, who came up to a Jew and he said, "Eat this chaylev, this non-kosher food. It's food he's not allowed to eat." And the Jew said, "No." He said, "I'm going to kill you if you don't eat it." And the Jew said, "I'm not eating it. Kill me." And this non-Jewish man said, "I'm going to spare your life. If you would have eaten it, I would see that you're not true to who you are. And because you're not true to who you are, therefore I hate liars, I hate jokers, I hate people who masquerade. You come and you tell me that you're Jewish, that you have values. Well, you're just the same as us. Well, how are you different from us? You do the same things we do. And how dare you call yourself Jewish people, chosen people?" Non-Jewish people want us to be proud Jews. If you're not a proud Jew, if you hide your Jewish identity, then they don't respect you. You think it's going to help. And I'm not saying it's easy. Trust me, I'm not saying it's easy. But in France, if you walk out on the street in France, some people say you will be beat up if you have a yarmulke. In England, I was there 10 years ago. I just walked onto a bus. The guy starts lashing out at me. I didn't do anything. I just turned up. It's not easy. But hiding your Judaism is not going to stop the anti-Semitism. Hiding your Judaism is just saying, hey, we sadly don't believe enough in what we're supposed to do. So my friends, we are proposing now a revolutionary concept that anti-Semites are hollow inside. They need to fill themselves with something. And they use the Jew, their hatred, because the Jewish people's meaning, their purpose, their sacrifice, their dedication bothers them. That there is something to life more than their sadness and their lack of purpose. And therefore, when they see the Jew and the Jew who has meaning and purpose, they despise that. For me, this is very profound. So anyway, so where are we up to, David?
We are up to page 63.
Yes.
Text 10.
Go for it, please, my friend.
Okay. Haman told them about his magnificent wealth and his many sons, and how the king had promoted him and advanced him above the other officials and royal courtiers. What is more, said Haman, Queen Esther personally prepared a feast, and besides the king, she did not invite anyone but me. And tomorrow, too, I am invited by her, along with the king. But all this means nothing to me each time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the palace gate.
It's very profound. Then you think about it. This guy is the most powerful person in the entire Persia. He's Achashverosh's right-hand man. And he's worried about the Jew who's not going to bow down to him. What's your problem? What is your problem? You know what his problem is? Because at the end of the day, all his power is nothing. It's hollow. And because it's hollow, therefore, that Jew has to spoil it, and that Jew has to show everyone that I'm not really as strong as I make out to be. That Jew exposes the fallacy of his existence. For some people to be great, everyone has to bow down. That damn Jew with his God and with his values and with his purpose is refusing to submit to my greatness. He's showing everyone that I am really not as powerful as everyone else believes I am. But David, do we have any questions in the chat, please?
No questions so far.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah, just say, I'm going to repeat your question so everyone on the line can do it. Yeah.
okay. What about the idea that the people who are not Jewish are very, they don't appreciate the fact that the Jews think they're the chosen people because they want to be the chosen people, and how dare us be that arrogant to think that
Okay.
we're chosen?
That's a good question. So the question is, being chosen, does that create arrogance? Okay. Now, having said that, we just say, all we believe is that there are differences. You have a human being. Human being has a brain and has a heart. Now, if everyone wants to be the heart, it's not going to work. If everyone wants to be the brain, it doesn't work. If everyone in society is exactly the same, it doesn't work. What makes a body function, what makes a community cohesive is when everyone does their role, what they were created to do. Haman has a function, a purpose. And Mordechai has a function and a purpose. They're different, but they work hand in hand. We Jews, we don't proselytize. We don't go after people and try and chop them and grab them and make them Jews. And the reason is because we say they have a purpose, being non-Jewish. Who says they have to only have a meaning and a purpose being a Jew? They can go to heaven like we can go to heaven, but they have a different purpose. We're not the same. Doesn't mean that we're superior. We're different. We have different roles. We have different functions, but it's one cohesive community, one functioning body. And when everyone does what they're supposed to do, we can coexist and flourish. And we believe, and Chabad is a very interesting phenomenon, because I think we said last week, for the religious Jews, we're not religious enough. For the secular Jews, we're too religious. But I believe, this I can't help it, this is what I believe, in teaching morality to the world. I don't believe that Judaism is only for Jews. I believe that we have a purpose and non-Jewish people have a purpose. Everyone has a purpose. It's a different purpose. Just like yes, what's your question?
What about being hurt? Okay, we have our roles. We're Jewish, we're not Jewish, anti-Semitism. We maybe have a way to look at anti-Semitism, but that's people to people. But what about groups of people, and what about being hurt? Thinking of the Holocaust.
Okay.
When you have a whole society that hates you and that hurts you.
Well, it's very hard. The question is, what about hurts? When a whole society hates you, it's very, very hard. And it's a crime you didn't do. And I just think, personally, I think, that if we bring God to the masses, and when I say God, not to become Jewish, but morality, values, doing the right thing, purpose. Who says a person has to be have purpose to be Jewish? If Haman had purpose, if Haman realized that he's a human being made in the image of God, and he was put in this world to serve God in his specific way, he wouldn't feel so empty, and he wouldn't get so upset at this Jew who refuses to bow to him. That Mordechai who refused to bow to him, what he's really doing is he's exposing his insecurity and how hollow he is inside. Just for someone to hate you, they don't even know you. They hate you because they have never met you. You know what? I'm very proud, and next week's all about Israel. But I'll tell you what I'm very proud. I wish she was on now. There's a friend, and normally she's on. Her son went on birthright. Okay, they went on birthright. Her son wasn't going to stay Jewish. Her son, disenchanted with the whole Jewish business. And her son, on birthright, they took him to a jail, and they showed how Jews treat the Arab prisoners. You know what this kid said? I want to get more into Judaism, and I'm going to be more Jewish. You know why? Hey, you have a people, the Jewish people, which are surrounded by 70 hungry wolves we spoke about last week. You have a people who are persecuted, bombs going off, terrorist attacks. They're in jail for a reason. And we, the Jews, we're worried about how the Arabs, the prisoners, how they're treated. That's unbelievable. You tell me someone else like that. I mean, that turned on this boy, that this boy has a very Jewish life today because he saw how we treat other people, how we treat our enemies, how we treat our enemies. And I tell you, I am very pro-Israel. I can't help it. My dad fought in the Israeli army. I'm very proud of that. And I love, there was an anti-Israel demonstration. And a Chabad rabbi, he wasn't even a rabbi, he was a bacher, he was one of these rabbinical students. He went up to people who were Jewish, demonstrating against Israel, which for me, we'll speak about next week, is very strange. And he put on tefillin he prayed, he put on the black boxes with anti-Israel protester. So the anti-Israel protester is holding a thing, Free Palestine. I don't know what he's holding. And then you have a Chabad rabbi putting a tefillin on him while he's holding the Free Palestine. See, for me, I love that, because you can believe whatever you believe, and I think it's suicide, but people can believe whatever they want to believe. And at the same time, I want you to put on tefillin. Let's put on tefillin. So just because you believe something which I think is very dangerous, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't have to put on tefillin today. I just, for me, it's a big deal, So anyway, let's go on. So,
well, before we do, there was a question in here. The audience member writes, given this premise, why is it that those who profess their faith the loudest have the most hate?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. Well, that's assuming that they do have. I think Hitler hated all Jews, assimilated Jews. He went after, if he could get you. I think his hatred was irrational, because even, and this is a separate topic, but I'll just tell you very, very fast. We have Purim, we have Hanukkah. Purim, kill the Jews. That's what it was. Kill the Jews. It was the Holocaust. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you practice. You're Jewish. We want you dead. That's Purim. Hanukkah, you become one of us. We'll accept you. You accept Christianity. We're not going to burn you at the order de fe. That's the Spanish Inquisition. That's Hanukkah. That's the story of Hanukkah. It's a spiritual battle. Hanukkah is a spiritual battle. Purim is a physical battle. I hate Jews, full stop. I don't care what you believe. So it's not so simple, but we could go into it, but I there's a lot to say. And the Rebbe spoke a lot about this. But for now, let's just go on. I just to say one thing. When your person's being bullied, Golda Meir was a brilliant lady. She was a prime minister of Israel. She was my grandmother's hero, because my grandmother was a tough Russian lady from Kishinev. And Golda Meir, in the beginning of the state of Israel, ladies were getting raped. They're getting raped. So what did they say? They said, we're going to make a rule. We're going to make a rule that a curfew that ladies cannot be out at night past 9 o'clock. So Golda Meir, she stood up and she said, excuse me, ladies aren't raping people, men are. Why can't ladies be on the street? Maybe men shouldn't be on the street. See, I love that. That's smart. Anti-Semites, they're the ones who are bullies. Why? Because someone's a bully. I can't go on the playground because he's a bully. Maybe he should get off the playground. I didn't tell him he can't. Why do we have to suffer because we're being bullied? Maybe they should be restricted where and what they can do. So having said that, this is very important. And in the student page 64, please, David, take it away. Text number 11.
Jews must fight anti-Semitism, but never internalize it. That is easier said than done. If you're hated, it is natural to believe that you are hateful, that the defect lies in you. It rarely does. Hate exists in the mind of the hater, not in the person of the hated. Jews have faults, and Judaism is a religion of self-criticism and repentance, but those faults have nothing to do with those of which they are accused by their enemies. Anti-Semitism tells us about anti-Semites, not Jews. One of the mistakes made by good, honorable, and reflective Jews was to believe that since Jews were hated because they were different, they should try as far as possible not to be different. So some converted, others assimilated, yet others reformulated Judaism to eliminate as far as possible all that made Jews and Judaism distinctive. When these things failed, as they did not only in the 19th century Germany and Austria, but also in 15th century Spain, some internalized this failure. Thus was born the tortured psychology known as Jewish self-hatred.
It's very sad. Next week, we're going to speak about it at length. I'll never forget, because I was at Ohio State University. We brought in Ehud Olmert at the time. He was the mayor of Jerusalem. It was a Jewish girl. We'll speak about it next week. She was the daughter of a rabbi. And she was the one who led the BDS, it wasn't BDS back then, Free Palestine movement, and who ruined the speech of Ehud Olmert, daughter of a rabbi, Meshuggah. So I'm sorry, because I hate to say it, when what's it called, when God forbid her family should never happen, needs a safe place to run away to, guess what? She's starting up with Israel, which is going to take her in, and she's ruining her own haven and her own place, which is open to her. Just Jewish people, we're very extreme, but I don't want to take away from next week. Let's do page, because I want to finish on time. We have 5 minutes to go. Let's do page 72, text number 16. It's something similar what I alluded to before, please.
I started going with my father to Hadassah, Ein Kerem Hospital, for his chemotherapy. And to my shock, I started to observe that the doctors and nurses treated him as a patient. The doctors were very friendly, and the nurses were also. He would bring them fruit, flowers, and chocolate, and I noticed in the hospital that Palestinians are also receiving treatment. That actually awakened me to a great extent to the humanity in the other, and it also awakened my humanity. This was the starting point.
Okay. I believe very much that people are redeemable, unless, of course, they've been programmed, they're in a cult, I don't know, of hatred, I believe, and this lesson for when we should respond to statements, but I believe that human beings are redeemable. That's what I believe. I visit people in jail, and people say, why are you doing that? They did a crime against society. Say, some people get caught and some people don't get caught. But, unfortunately, people do crimes, and people are redeemable. And we believe when we fill the hollowness which is in people, fill the hollowness. And I'm not chas v'shalom, God forbid, not for a second am I telling anyone to become Jewish, not for a second. I believe, I think it's important of a moment of silence. A moment of silence is the public school kids should begin the day with a moment of silence. No one should tell them what to think. No one should dictate to them any particular religion, but the idea of a higher authority. America, on the dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." We shouldn't be ashamed of that. God is a good thing. I'm not talking about where you hijack God and you use it as an excuse to kill people. I'm talking about God, which has values, which is absolute. That's a good thing. And America, and I'll never forget, my kid Yitzi, he was a little kid. We went on an airplane, and he collected currency. Kids collect coins and currency. And he said, "What's the best dollar bill?" And I told him, America. So why not Israel? And I told him, you know why? Because Israel in 1948, they were too ashamed to put on the dollar bill, "In God we trust." In America, they acknowledge God. They acknowledge a higher authority. You don't want to call it God, call it a higher authority. Call it something. When America is built on values, that's a good thing. I like religious people. And just to conclude, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he had a wagon driver called Alex. He wasn't Jewish. One day Alex was sick, and they went on a journey. And one day, this new wagon driver went past a cross, and he didn't cross himself. The Baal Shem Tov said, "Let's get out of the wagon." They said, "What do you care? What do you care? He's not Christian. What do you care?" Baal Shem Tov said, "If he's not held accountable to a higher authority, we got a problem. He could do something not good to us." I like God. I like people, kids, being held accountable to a higher authority. A moment of silence where we don't push, we don't tell them what to believe, I think is a very important initiative. And God bless Senator Niraj Antani, who introduced it. And he is a great American because he's not scared to do the right thing. So my friends, and an anti-Semite, it's sad. I feel rachmanis. I feel mercy. Sad. This is your life to hate me. What did I do to you exactly? This is your whole life to be anti-me. This is your life. This is what you call your existence. But if there's a way to redeem them, is a way to teach them, is a way to show them the right way. And when there's an earthquake in Iran, Israel offered to go to Iran and to help. We're the first country that offers to help anyone in a horrible position, and people forget that, and people want to focus in on sad realities which happen, and it's a minute of the population. It's sad. So, my friends, next week we are going to discuss, and I urge you to look through the readings. You can text me, and I saw someone texted me, and I never got the text, but now I'm going to respond. So those of you who want to contact me, please, I'll give you my phone number, 614-570-0019. That's the best way to get hold of me. 614, text me, please. 614-570-0019. If you text me, I get back to everyone. And the more we bring God, the more we feel people's hollowness. This Talmudic passage is brilliant. That Haman was hollow. That's what he was. And that's why he hated Mordechai the Jew. So for me, this is very insightful. I want to wish everyone a great evening. Next week, 7:30, we speak about, is an anti-Israel person an anti-Semite? That's what we speak about in a very logical, methodical